Hello and welcome to a special edition of Let's Talk, our award-winning podcast series produced and delivered to you by Hazel and Betty Ford. I'm your host, William C. Moyers, and this is a bittersweet moment for me. Sweet because I'm with Jerry Moe, the National Director of the Children's Program at Hazel and Betty Ford. Bitter, well, Jerry, I'll let you explain to our audience why I'm a little bit bitter today.
Well, I am too. I'm going to retire.
Retire?
After all these years, yeah. Very hard decision.
How does it feel?
I think a lot of different feelings. I'm certainly going to miss the work. I'm certainly going to miss the people that I work with. That's for certain. Yeah. And it's been a time for me to reflect, which I hate to do, William. I never want to look back. I'm always looking forward. Yeah. But it really marks the end of a chapter, if you will, and looking back and seeing, geez, okay, this is what we've done. These are some accomplishments. These are some regrets.
Yeah, but a long chapter, a good chapter, a chapter that's all about children and the fact that children can recover from a loved one's substance use issue, yes?
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't do this for as long as I've had unless I didn't believe that. So, great message of hope. And the best news of all is this work will continue. The Hazel and Betty Ford Children's Program is probably stronger today than it's ever been since the merger. Wow. You know, Helene Photius will be the new executive director of children's programs. We've worked together for almost 15 years. Yes. And we've been working toward this day for the last couple of years. So she is ready, and the program's ready.
Well, we've had Helene on some of these Let's Talk podcasts, and she's passionate and competent and a leader. She's not going to step into your shoes because nobody can step into Jerry Moe's shoes, but she'll forge her own path with the children's program.
But you know, the best news of all, she'll be stepping into her shoes with a real forward-looking vision in terms of how do we grow this. William, you're right. Boys and girls can and do heal from this insidious disease. And Helene and her staff are going to make sure that they do it for more and more boys and girls and families. That's the good news.
Yes, indeed. Let's look back on your career.
Come on.
Well, we can do that now because you are retiring. What was a highlight of all your years working in this field, Jerry?
I'm going to give you a simple answer because I have a simple mind. I mean, we could talk about all of the boys and girls that have healed and all of the wonderful places we've gone. But to me, I think the most significant thing is through all these years working in treatment, which can be a very challenging thing in and of itself, topsy-turvy, ups and downs. I think it's always keeping the why of me doing this front and center. Mm-hmm. Now, there's been plenty of times I've been knocked down, knocked off balance, maybe get up and not necessarily see that why, but it's always come back to that why, that purpose, and to know there's one more boy or girl, one more family out there that desperately needs our help.
Yeah, what motivated you to focus on children and their families? Where does that come from?
It comes from me. I mean, it comes from a very simple story, William. I was 14 years old when I started to get help, and it was huge. It changed the entire family, and it changed the landscape, the legacy of our family, if you will. And I didn't realize at the time what a gift I'd been given, a gift that my older brother and my older sister never got. And I was 21 years old. I was getting ready to teach school, elementary school. That's really where I started. And it hit me one day that, wow, look at the gift that I have. Look how close I am to my mom and my dad. Look how we're all a family in recovery. But then there's that bittersweet that you started the program out. Well, I was really grateful. I couldn't help but wonder, how about if somebody would have helped me when I was 7 or 8 or 9? Would it have changed things in our family earlier? Would some of the trauma that I went through maybe didn't have to take place? So why do boys and girls need to wait? And we make sure at the Hazel and Betty Ford Children's Program that they don't have to wait.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you had that personal experience that sort of drove you and gave you that awareness, but you also had the professional acumen, if you will. I remember meeting you and realizing now that I met you before you came to the Betty Ford Center. Talk about your experience as a professional before you got to BFC.
Geez, back in 1977, 1978, doing a children's program. I had the blessing of going through the only 12-step program they kick you out of because you get too old. That would be Alateen. So you take that experience, my own healing, going to school, learning, first of all, how to be a teacher. So what's age appropriate, developmentally appropriate? How do you do lesson plans? How do you reach boys and girls in their predominant style of learning? So combining those and creating a children's program and looking for a treatment center that would just let me try this out as a grand experiment. And so wildly successful. I didn't realize then that there were some programs in other parts of the United States, including right here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Children Are People, all the way back in the day. So, and then it was writing books, and then all of a sudden it was, hey, there's more programs out there. Would you come and consult with our program? Will you sit in it for a couple of days? Tell us what's missing. How do we make it more child-centered? How do we engage the family members? How do we make it fun so boys and girls want to come back?
How did you get to the Betty Ford Center?
What an incredible blessing that whole story was. I had gone to the Betty Ford Center in 1997 to do what I would always do, William, sit in on a program. So I sat there for the 4 days, and no one knew who I was, which is good. I'm just a volunteer in the program, so kids would be asking me for stuff. Hey, where's the marker? Hey, can you open this for me? So it blended in perfectly. But then writing a report, and the Betty Ford Center had just received 2 enormous gifts. So Ronald McDonald Children's Charities gave the Betty Ford Center $1 million.
Wow.
And then Joan Kroc and the family matched it. And so I was thinking, honestly, wrote up the report, handed it in. I couldn't take money for it, so I had them donate the money to the National Association for Children of Addiction. And you know that organization well. Sis Wenger, we both served on that board together.
Yes.
And I got to admit, flying back home to Tucson, I wondered, geez, that must be nice to have a couple of $1 million in the bank to play with. Oh boy, I feel like Monopoly money. Would we do some things with that?
Yes.
And then just events happen. It's amazing how God works in my life all these years, higher power, and ended up getting an invitation to come there and to work there.
And when you got there, there was a children's program at the Betty Ford Center. Many people think, including me, that one time that you were the founder of the children's program. To the contrary.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of myths about that. People say that I was the first employee there. If only, come on. You know, he's never, you know, he's always there. But no, to give it due credit, from the beginning, there was a children's program, but it was done periodically. It was done in a piecemeal kind of way. Was it effective? Absolutely. You know, keep in mind that Mrs. Ford, when she went to treatment at the Naval Hospital in Long Beach, her family came and participated, made a huge difference in her recovery. And that's why when the Betty Ford Center opened, 3 weeks from the opening, had the first family program. And a lot of people said, oh, wait a year, come on, get your clinical program established. Absolutely not. Family plays such an important part. And it was those gifts, it was the $2 million that really got the center to say, we need to do this in a full-time way now. And that's when I came.
What year was that?
1998.
So in 98 you got there, and you sort of baked in, if you will, the children's program into the rest of the mission of the organization, the Betty Ford Center. And you hired staff and you brought it up to a regularly scheduled program, correct?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that whenever you go to a new place, you always have to make the children's program fit the existing program and not be seen as separate, but an integral part of the fabric. And so I needed to learn how everything operated at the center and what's the best way to do this. And so we created a model that we use to this day, certainly with fine-tuning and tweaking through the years, always a growing and breathing and healthy model. But that's where it started, and it's been an incredible journey.
Talk about Mrs. Ford's role and influence in your life and the Ford family.
Well, people don't realize today, because Mrs. Ford has been gone for so long, how actively she was involved in every aspect of the center. I think about the building, and you've been there, the Daniels building where the children's program is, and so that came about in 2002. And Mrs. Ford personally looked at every piece of art that went on the wall. She did the color scheme of the carpets, even some of the frilly things that we had are these Architectural Digest magazines coming and taking pictures because it was done, she wanted recessed lighting for little kids so it's not in their face. So she was just brilliant in terms of being so heavily involved. And I asked her one time, I said, Mrs. Ford, why are you so involved? And she looked at me and she smiled, and in only the way she could, and she says, Jerry, my name's on this place. This is really important. We have an opportunity to transform people's lives. And from her vision, not just the people in treatment, but their family and their children.
And to do that not just at the center in Rancho Mirage, but it also, you grew the children's program into other cities.
We did that. We did, and the other point, you're right, we'll talk about that in just a minute. The other point was from the beginning, because it was the primary question I had when I went there. And Mrs. Ford and the board and the powers that be said, we will have this children's program open to all boys and girls. And that come from a family of addiction. Because, William, think about the Surgeon General's report that came out in 2016. It said that 10% of the people who need treatment go get treatment. So if we just had the program for the children of patients, what about all those other boys and girls out there suffering? And so it was always open to other boys and girls. And then we began to expand. And for the history of the Betty Ford Center, we were really the first successful expansion programs outside of the confines of our campus in Rancho Mirage.
Yes, yes, and you expanded to Denver, to
Yep.
Dallas.
Yep.
Yeah, and so more children could experience that healing children's program without having to go to the center in the desert.
Absolutely. And back then, Dallas came first. And the idea was that if you looked at the demographics of the center, the second most populous place people were coming was from Texas. And so with a handful of grateful alums and business people who adored President Ford and Mrs. Ford, they raised those initial monies that allowed us to get there. In Colorado, it was one of our alums who gave this crazy challenge. And I'm thinking, we can't do this. An alum, a grateful alum, and a grateful family that just adored the Betty Ford Center said, all right, I will give you $250,000, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to bring the program to Colorado without a staff there, without a building there. We'll help with the outreach, and we'll do the program in a hotel. And so that was the humble beginnings on May the 1st, 2003, and now they're about to get into a brand new space in the Denver Tech Center, double what we've had before. So the growth, and it is possible, but it's being able to have a really talented and dedicated staff who were so focused on doing this work and have the same passion that I have.
And then in the history of the children's program and its expansion, another big milestone, if you will, is in 2014 with the merger of the Betty Ford Center and Hazelden Foundation. What did that mean to the children's program, that merger, Jerry?
Oh, it was always one of those things, my goodness, what's going to happen with all of this?
Yes.
Who knows? And all I knew was I needed to continue to do this work. And I wanted to make sure that we could make this merger as seamless as possible. Now, it really helped. We had a president and CEO, Mark Mishik, who would come to me and say, Jerry, you know what the biggest question people are asking about the merger? Are we going to get a children's program? So I figured that we were in pretty good shape. But it's like anything else. You need to hustle, you need to work hard every single day. And I need to keep that why right in front of me in order to do that.
Yeah, and you have done that. We only have a couple of minutes, Jerry. I'm glad we're going to have an opportunity to do more podcasts. This is one of several that we're going to do. But let me ask you before we close, what is your legacy? What's your legacy from your perspective?
Well, see, I see it in a different light. I truly do. When I look back on my career, the most defining moment, and William, I've been blessed, there's been a lot of defining moments, but the most defining moment was being chosen to come to the Betty Ford Center. Now, I must admit, I did not completely understand the history. I had never met Mrs. Ford. I had no sense of the love and the spirit that that place has and the alumni. And so I got caught up in that and really became part of that family. So the way that I see it is Mrs. Ford blessed me, the board of directors, the leadership blessed me and handed me the keys to something that was precious to Mrs. Ford, real deeply embedded in her heart. And so for 23 plus years, that's what I've been working on. And we've made a lot of strides. But you know what? It's time for a change. I think for everybody, it's time to let the program grow. And so I am now handing the keys. And I'm so confident and I'm so excited. And the future of this children's program is incredibly bright. And so now Helene Photius and her team are going to take the keys to this, precious entity and grow it and build it and have it soar to brand new heights.
Well, we're certainly glad, Jerry, that you had those keys, that you opened that door, that you made the children's program what it was and what it is, and set up this organization to make sure that it continues not only in your spirit, not only in Mrs. Ford's spirit, but in the spirit of those children who are still to come to the children's program at the Hazel and Betty Ford Foundation. Jerry Moe, thank you very much for being with us today.
It's great to be with you, William, always.
Always. Well, there you go. Jerry Moe, a relentless champion for children, a tireless advocate for families, a beacon of hope for those who feel hopeless in the dark shadow of shame, an inspiration to professionals, and a shining star in the history of Hazel and Betty Ford. Jerry Moe, thank you for all you've done for all of us and all those who are still to come at Hazel and Betty Ford. I can thank you all for tuning in to this special edition of Let's Talk. Take good care, and we'll see you again.